Hello friends, this is John again for Volume 4 of our series on voter promotion. How you doing, Henry?
I'm doing quite well. How you doing today, John?
I'm good, thanks.
That's
so,
great.
I'm looking forward to us talking to our neighbors again today about voter promotion and what it's all about. To begin with, I just want to remind everybody that the key is majority rule. That's our goal, and that's a constitutional goal. And we need to replace practices in our election system. We need to make some changes so that we get 51% for the winners. Our system has been giving us 30% and putting people in office who've only got 30% of the electorate, and we want a system that gives each winner takes office because they got 51% of the electorate and not less than that.
And what's really, this is a tactic that we're talking about, but also it's something that we all can participate in. And where this comes in, myself, John, and everybody, we should be talking to our state and congressional representatives and telling them that we want a majority rule amendment. Now, Congress, in doing that, they can restrict participation of members if they receive less than the 51% of their electorate when elected. So that's very important. Now, in our previous Volume 3, we discussed at length the amendment. And if you want to review it at your leisure, you can go to www.jmanimus.com. And it lays it out for you. But this is another thing that we all could be doing to get the elections and ultimately the democracy we deserve as citizens.
So what we're talking about is that citizens who really want democracy and want majority rule need to explore any and all creative ideas that might help to get more people voting and to get majority rule. One example is compulsory voting and mandatory voting, and runoff elections with ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting is like having a general primary to get a winner with 51% of the electorate. And so that's one thing to keep in mind that could be done.
Yes. Another thing is gerrymandering. We're hearing a lot about that in the news as we're coming up on the midterm elections. And we feel that a way to combat gerrymandering is not to allow party registration. It violates the principle of the secret ballot. Gerrymandering, it kind of works like an alliance between the only two parties allowing gerrymandering to be used as a political tactic to control federal elections when one of the two parties controls the state legislature. So that's something that we would like to see stopped. And that also ties into ranked choice voting, having just more than one candidate and splitting up kind of like that mechanism, breaking that mechanism that enables gerrymandering and prevents us from having free and fair elections.
Another voter promotion policy that any citizens can advocate is to promote polling places to be as convenient as gas stations and convenience stores and fast food restaurants and supermarkets. I mean, if you think about it, automatic teller machines are trusted to be accurate. Why not have an automatic voting machine? You could have a station in a convenience store, and the convenience store presents themselves to the community as a good neighbor, or you can use a little space in the store to actually register to vote or to vote. If not register, maybe just actually vote. If there's an identification issue, credit cards are trusted all over the world as being reliable enough to make sure that when a transaction occurs, the seller is identified accurately, the buyer is identified accurately, and the price of the sale is identified accurately. That means the system is totally trusted. So we should be able to do that for voting also.
One thing I like is making Election Day a national holiday. Not only for, just for the practical purposes of, it's a national holiday, people aren't working, they can go at their leisure during the day and vote if they're going to go to a poll, but also it's a way to, bind us together as a country. We all seem to band together, under July the 4th, under Labor Day, and other national holidays. Well, this would be the perfect one to add to that, a national holiday for voting and elections.
Right. And another thing that could be done, whether we have mandatory voting or not, the ballots could have abstention boxes for each office. And that means you could check either something simple like none of the above, or I think it would be better to have something like none of the candidates listed on this ballot, or none of the parties listed on this ballot. And that way, people who are dissatisfied with the limitations of these two parties and only two parties would be able to say, well, I voted. I voted for none. And that means I got to participate and my voice was heard. There's all kinds of scientific experiments that could be tried out to see whether certain procedures or practices tend to help get us the majority rule that we're after.
We've talked about compulsory voting, but look at what could happen if we combine compulsory voting with the none of the above option. Say 40% not voting changes to 40% choosing none of the above option for all offices. Well, 40% reject of all the candidates and maybe all of the two political parties. What does that tell us? What does it mean? How do we measure it? And what changes in political parties or candidates would make it more likely for you and I, all of us, to cast a ballot for a party or a candidate? Because if I'm a candidate or the head of a political party in a group, and 40% of the population says none of the candidates that we're putting forth, I've got to start asking myself, if I want to remain a viable candidate or party, I need to re-examine the kind of candidates I'm putting up for people to vote for.
How about promptly after an election, your state election commission is obligated to publish widely for everybody to see the percentage of the electorate that the winners got. So if they got 38%, here it is, Smith is going to go to the Congress and be your representative, and Smith got 35% of the vote of the electorate. It reminds people what they need to be reminded of, that the system is not really delivering majority rule. And the next thing I thought we should talk about is there's a lot of unhappiness in the world of politics and economics. There's a lot of issues and a lot of discussion on these very important issues. And there's a question, how are all these problems going to be resolved? Well, here's number one: racism, equal rights for racial and ethnic minorities. Number two, closely related, religious conflicts and fears, the rights of minority Muslims and Hindus, for example. So there's two problems that we have to deal with. Do you have the list of what else comes up there?
Yeah, we got gay and lesbian rights is number three, accommodating transgender individuals. 4, gender and sports competition. And 5, economic debates. What happened to Wall Street? Has it become an out of control casino type of place instead of a place for people to invest? Betting on failures and losses, socialism versus our alleged free market. These are all things that are all tied together. And I'll do one more here. Enormous differences in personal wealth, the whole income inequality issue. Is this freedom? or is it a threat to democracy and civil rights?
We often see articles in the news and in magazines about emotional and mental health, among teenagers, among young adults. People have difficulty adapting to technological change. The most well-known problem, of course, is everybody's got their face in a cell phone all day, and people don't talk to one another as much as they used to, face-to-face. There's a tremendous loss of privacy due to the communications technology. When you buy something, it used to be just, here's your money, and I'll take the gadget. The way it is now, I buy something online or anywhere using my credit card, and the people who sold me whatever it is I just bought, they have my name, they have my address, they have my email, they have my cell phone, they have a list of everything I've purchased in the last 6 months. I mean, they just know everything about me just because I bought something. That's a big change from the 1950s and every decade before the 1950s. And that's something we are having trouble coping with, the loss of privacy in the sense that we live in a surveillance society.
And going along with these technological advancements is the big elephant in the room that's constantly being talked about. Consistent replacement of human labor with robots and AI. And it seems to me personally, and I'll put this out there, that the people that control this capital and the creation of AI and deployment, they seem to not be thinking about the human implications or really downplaying it. But we're seeing it everywhere. I'm still a working person, and I'm seeing it at my job and the ultimate things it could replace. So by having a fair democracy looking into these things, there should be some sort of rules or regulation that we all agree on for the healthy deployment of this technology, because it's not going to stop, but we don't need to be rolled over by it. Society doesn't need to be upheavaled in a way to where we no longer have jobs, we no longer have livelihoods, and it's all about servicing the machines and those men and women that control it with these tech companies.
And these developments mean economics can cause something that is a serious problem for any society, and that's the loss of dignity that comes when you're unemployed. This unequal personal security that includes the inequalities of income also is important and extremely painful and problematic, because the loss of health coverage, access to health care. If you don't have access through the health coverage itself, that means you have to pay for everything out of your own pocket. And there's a lot of wonderful medical procedures and surgeries and medicines and treatments that are miraculous and we're very grateful for. But unfortunately, many of them cost many thousands of dollars, sometimes 10,000, sometimes 50,000, sometimes more than that. And if you owe that, that means you're just the debtor for the rest of your life, because you had something beyond your control, a disease or a condition or an injury. So there's an issue for us that we've been talking about for a long time, the inequality that comes from access to health care. There are cultural changes that go along with the technological changes. There's changes in household and family composition. People used to have large families, now they have small families or none. Some young people are actually choosing not to have children because of the economic conditions they have to cope with. There's a loss of access to the ancestral home. People used to stay in the town they were born in for their entire lives, or at least most of their lives, and have access to their family, their parents and their grandparents and their cousins and aunts and uncles. Now people move primarily to get a job or to get education. That's a change that we have to cope with. It affects mental health. And What do we have next on our list there?
Well, we have social isolation of the elderly, of teens and young adults, the high costs of transportation, housing, food. That's something that all of us relate to, all of us have to deal with every day. And then also, just the environmental damages, visible signs of mass extinctions and changes that aren't being addressed. With this list that we've just gone through, there's been approximately 15 different things, but it's things that we all discuss every day. Maybe not all 15 at one time, but 2 or 3 here and there, 2 or 3 another time, or one in a large conversation. But overall, I'd like to ask a question: whether you're independent, Democrat, Republican. This sounds like things we've all talked about and we all have concerns about. So no matter what party you're affiliated with or not affiliated with, is your political leaders addressing these? Are these things part of their platform? Do they have workable solutions or even a plan on how to address these things? And those are things we should be asking when we go to the poll of our candidates. Are they talking about these things that matter most to us on a day-to-day level?
I do want to point out, of course, one issue that is extremely important and gets a lot of attention most of the time is the question of the freedom of a woman. Does a woman have the choice to be a mother or not? And we seem to have policies in place sometimes and laws suggesting that if there's an unwanted pregnancy, she still has to become a mother, even though she's not planning to be a mother and doesn't feel prepared to be a mother. And that issue also includes a man who would be the father, and he is also being faced with that decision about his freedom. And I want to point out that we have all these problems we've talked about. You know why? And you might say, well, I thought you were just talking about voting and elections. Why are you talking about all these problems? Well, I'll tell you why. These problems should be recognizable to everybody in the United States as ongoing problems. How come we have the most powerful military on the planet, and we're supposed to be, we're alleged to be the greatest democracy in the world, and we have these difficulty with solving our own problems? We don't seem to be doing so well. Why do these problems linger? It could be because we don't have majority rule, couldn't it? That's what I think. And so, according to a theory called Occam's razor, Occam's razor says if you have a problem and it tends, when you sit down to discuss what are the possible solutions, you come up with solutions that are kind of challenging and difficult, and you have to make changes, and it's hard, and some people don't want this solution, some people don't want that solution. Occam's razor says the best solution is going to be the simplest solution.
Yes.
And wouldn't it be amazing if the solution to all these problems is majority rule? If we had a better election system, and we had candidates who actually got 51% of the vote, then maybe what would happen is people would really get what they want, because the candidates would have gotten elected by the majority.
That's right.
And failure to solve these problems, failure for government to play a beneficial and a competent role in solving these problems would be a failure of the candidates. And but it's not a failure of the candidates if they feel that they're only representing a third of the electorate.
That's right. That's right. So, to summarize and close out the voter promotion video series, moving forward in the process of reforming our election system, we want you to all keep in mind the following 4 principles. One being, the best way to prevent democracy is to persuade the people that they already have it.
A free people must have a system where the authority of government is based on majority rule.
And then so long as we are genuinely committed to democracy, we must have election rules and practices that give us a 51% winners. That means 51% of the adults eligible to vote.
Let's keep in mind that government of the people, by the people, and for the people was stated eloquently as our main goal in the 1790 Continental Congress. This was affirmed by President Abraham Lincoln in 1863. And not that long ago, about 60 years ago, we had a sad occasion in our political life and on just in the whole mood of our society in the 1960s, because
we lost 4 great defenders of democracy between November 22nd, 1963 and June 5th of 1968. You know, that was JFK, of course, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and then ultimately Bobby Kennedy. These 4 men were assassinated for standing up and trying to defend democracy. But as we learn, democracy cannot be assassinated. It can only be given up and not fought for, but it can't be assassinated.
And so the principle that we want people to keep in mind, if you need fewer words, is just simply that voter promotion is democracy promotion. You know, there's something I wanted to say about this. Had occurred to me a long time ago. You know, Americans like choices. Choice is the essence of freedom. I mean, freedom means you have a choice. Each choice might be followed by consequences. It doesn't mean, you know, one choice is perfect and the other one is totally bad. Sometimes the making choices gets complicated. But usually we have many choices. I used to think of the example of ice cream, you know. There was a famous seller of ice cream that used to have a big sign that said 28 flavors. Well, imagine if you walked in and said, well, we don't do 28 flavors anymore. We just have 2. We just have vanilla and chocolate. Hope you're satisfied with that. Not very likely. What about, I'm going to buy a car. Well, I can get a Ford or a Chevy. Those are my 2 choices. You know, Americans would not accept ever having just 2 choices. Look at what we have in our restaurants and the food choices we have. You know, imagine if every restaurant in the United States of America offered either a hot dog or a hamburger, and that's it. That's all you get to choose from.
So basically what you're saying is, why would we accept that in something so large and, you know, all-encompassing for society as just 2 parties, and then apparently we can see the job that they've done.
That's exactly it. How can we be so certain that we want many choices in our clothing, in makeup, in our hairdos? I mean, we just thrive on choices, except in politics. Why is that? What is this craziness where we act like we only need 2 choices for our government? 2 platforms, 2 policy groups, so to speak. If you think about what that means, that limitation of choices on our political choices and our legal representatives, it raises questions about why. Why is that realm of our activity so unique that we only have 2 choices?
That's true.
So this is pretty much it, I think, for our Volume 4, and what is, I think we feel is the end of this series on voter promotion.
And it will be, the 4 videos have been titled the Voter Promotion Chronicles. Please check out these websites behind us for more information. And who knows, after the midterm elections, we may do a 5th video just to sum up how the elections went, what went on, and how that ties in with, you know, our platform of voter promotion instead of over voter suppression. But we thank you for joining us, listening to us, and, you know, hopefully, you know, we've all learned something. Us from putting together this information, studying it, and you from, you know, listening to us and reviewing the sites.
So Henry and I are a couple of friends who meet regularly, and this is one of the things we've talked about, and we wanted to kind of like knock on the public door and say what we had to say about voter promotion. Remember, voter promotion is resistance to voter suppression, which is very undemocratic, shouldn't be tolerated at all in a democratic society. So thanks for listening to us, and we are aware that we're not the only ones talking about this at this time. Many Americans are concerned, and I think to the extent that we make express our wishes and our prayers. I'm speaking for myself. I would say that I pray and we pray.
Yes.
That the American people, all of us, will just really do something about this, and not just talk about it, not just say, woe is me. Let's do something about our election system so that the winners get 51% and we have majority rule.
That's right. I think that's it, John.
Is that it for us?
I think that's it for now.
For
At any rate, have a great one, and
Yeah.
thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.